Greetings, everyone. My name is Emmanuel, and I would like to welcome you to our program today. We are continuing our series on rebuilding a new and prosperous Africa through decentralization. See, the system of government that we have today in Africa is not working. It's working only for the rich people. It's working only for the ruling class. It is not working for the majority of the poor people. Only the rich and the wealthy, the business guys, some of them, not all, are enjoying from the current political system that we have in most of our African countries. The centralized system is not working for the ordinary man. The centralized system is not working for the poor. The rich continue to get richer, while the poor continue to get poorer. So something must be done. People have to come together to demand for constitutional reform. We need a new system. And this new system is the kingdom concept of decentralization. I'm not talking about the, pseudo or fake decentralization that many countries in Africa have adopted, because the decentralization that many countries are practicing right now is not yielding, political, economic, social dividends. So there is need for us to jettison the fake decentralization system that many African countries have adopted, to embrace the true kingdom concept of decentralization. Now, our topic for today is that the kingdom concept of decentralization is an effective tool, it's an effective mechanism for preventing political conflicts in Africa. The kingdom concept of decentralization is an effective mechanism, effective tool, effective system for preventing political conflicts in Africa. You see, the centralized system that we have is not capable of preventing the numerous conflicts that we have in Africa. It's not working in Chad, it's not working in DRC, it's not working in Cameroon. Nigeria presently is boiling. Mali, Somalia, so many countries in Africa. They're having challenges. There's political conflict in those countries. Remember, sub-Saharan Africa, and Africa as a whole, 54 countries, the population of 1.3 billion people, with 3,000 tribes and 2,000 languages. The continent is very complex, and the individual countries on the continent, they are difficult to manage because of the numerous tribes in each of our countries. In Cameroon, for example, we have about 250 tribes. In other places, they have about 300 tribes. So how can you manage such a diverse population? The centralized system does not work, and it has not worked. For over, many African countries got their independence in 1960, and up till now, 2021, we still see conflicts in many African countries. Why? Because the centralized system cannot effectively resolve the political conflicts that we have on our continent right now. So we need a new system that will usher in prosperity and development and transformation of our countries in Africa. And that system is a true kingdom, decentralized system. That is a system that God, introduced in the Garden of Eden. The kingdom system of governance is the decentralized system of government. But you see, our leaders are adopting, an opposite system, which is the centralized system. Now, what is decentralization? Decentralization could be defined as the transfer of power and resources from the national government or the federal government to states or regions and to local authorities, to the private sector and to the civil sector. Why? So that the needs of the people will be met. So the purpose of decentralization is for the satisfaction of the needs of the people. Why do we have to transfer power from the central government to the subnational governments, to the local governments, to the states, to the regions? It is because we want the needs of the people in the localities to be met. But in a centralized system, power and resources are being controlled by the elites. And we all know that in politics, it is a game of interest. The elites will do things that will favor them and their cronies. So that is why a centralized system is not the best form of government, to be practiced in Africa, especially, our countries in Africa, because of the, divided societies that we have. And these divided societies are prone to conflict. One tribe fighting another tribe, one region fighting another region. That is the composition of most African countries. So many tribes. How do you manage a country with so many tribes? Let's adopt the kingdom concept of decentralization. That is the solution. That is the form of government that God, wants nations to adopt. God is the one who created us, and God is the one who created the universe, created planet Earth, created the nations, set the boundaries. So God has already given us a formula. God has already given us a model. God has already given us, a pattern in the Bible, and it is called decentralization. Now, how can the kingdom concept of decentralization prevent conflicts, political conflicts in Africa? Like we said before, Africa has a lot of tribes, 3,000 and 2,000 languages. In the individual countries in Africa, the 54 countries, you also have so many tribes in a particular nation. So and these tribes, according to studies, it has been shown that Africa is prone to conflict. And we see it every day. We hear it on radio, on television, how there is, fighting everywhere. In Cameroon, presently they are fighting. Nigeria is boiling. DRC, Somalia, Mali, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, different places. Even yes, in Senegal as well. You have a particular region there that is, in turmoil. The Buganda people in Uganda fighting the central government because their autonomy has been eroded. In Ethiopia, you have the Oromo people with their own issues. Almost everywhere we have political instability. And, we have been talking about God prospering our nations. When we have conflicts, the government will use the money that is supposed to build schools, build roads, hospitals, to buy ammunitions. So instead of bringing development in our nations, conflicts help to bring poverty in our nations. That is why, as African nations, we shouldn't be involved in fighting, involved in political conflicts. We have to find a way of resolving our conflicts in our nations. Because according to some statistics, African governments, Africa now as a whole, spend about maybe $15 to $20 billion on ammunitions. And now Africa has found a friend in China, and we all know how, the system of the Chinese they are pumping arms in Africa right now, pumping surveillance equipments in Africa right now. So the situation is not going to get better. And this is a time for Africans to rise up and demand constitutional reform so that, the younger generations will be saved. The younger generations will be protected. God has blessed us with the natural resources. God is not going to be blamed. Prayer is important, but prayer is not enough to bring transformation. We need to come up with ideas and solutions. That's why this platform is bringing out or proposing decentralization as an option to what we have now in Africa, so that there will be transformation in our societies and in our nations. So the first way through which decentralization can bring peace in Africa is through sharing of power. The sharing of power. Remember, the key word here is centralization. Now, centralization means that power and resources are in the hands of the ruling elites. Power and resources are in the hands of the ruling elites. That's centralization. Power is centered in the hands of the ruling elites. Decentralization means you take the power and the resources from the ruling elites and give it to the people in the regions, the people in the states, and the people in the municipalities. So there is a transfer of power and resources from the central government or the national government to the regions or the states and the localities. So the first key in resolving political conflicts in Africa is the sharing of power. There are, in some countries, you have 3 tiers of government. You have the national government, you have the regional or state government, and you have the local government. So those are 3 tiers of government, 3 levels of government. So when we are talking about decentralization, we are talking about the sharing of power between the national government, the state or regional government, and the local government. Remember, in centralization, power and resources is concentrated in the hands of the ruling elites. That's the national government. But in decentralization, you take the power and the resources from the elites and distribute it and share it with the regions and with the local government. So when you share political power amongst the national government, that's the first tier. The second tier is the regional or state government. And then the third tier is the municipal government. So you share political power among these 3 levels of government. So everybody, especially in Africa where we have so many tribes, everybody is included in sharing the national cake. So some tribes or regions will not feel excluded, will not feel marginalized. When regions and tribes feel that they are marginalized, they will start fighting the central government either for secession or for recognition of their autonomy. You see, that is one of the reasons that brings conflict in most African countries. Why? Because some regions and some tribes are excluded from sharing the national cake. So you share power between the national government, the state, and the municipal government. Now, in a good system, the national government is a limited government. That's the concept that the Americans developed in their federal system. It's a limited government. So the government does not perform all the functions in organizing the affairs of the state. The federal government performs only a few functions. And then the remaining functions are performed by the states and the municipalities. The state also devolve powers to the municipalities. So that is what we call sharing of power. You share power, the national government shares power with the state government and the local government. So that is what is called decentralization. The first key to preventing conflict in Africa, where we have so many tribes, and these tribes are fighting each other, the first solution is to share political power. is to transfer power and resources to the regions and or states and to the local government. When you do that, you appease, regions the regions that feel that they are being marginalized, regions that feel that they are being excluded. So when you give them power and resources, they will be happy. They will not want to secede. So you see that decentralization can prevent secession in African countries. You see that decentralization, if properly applied, can keep tribes and regions together. Let's take a good example. Right now in Nigeria, we hear a lot of talks about the eastern side, the IPOB people or IPOB people especially. They want to leave. Why? Because they feel marginalized. They feel excluded from sharing political power. So they are annoyed. They are angry. How can we be Nigerians and we are being excluded? You see the reason? So decentralization can solve that problem by granting the people of the East, by sharing power, the national government and the regional government, the Eastern people, the Igbo people. So government can give them resources and power, and that will calm them down because they can now define their own vision. They can now define their own policies and execute their own policies without the intervention of the federal government of Nigeria. You see how decentralization can solve, conflict in a nation. The Yoruba people also are fighting right now. They want to break away from Nigeria. It's the same application. You give them power and resources, to calm them down, to appease them. And then the northern sector also, the federal government shares power with the 3 regions in Nigeria, so that each region will be able to define their own policies and execute their own policies. You remember during the days of the Niger Delta militants, and they were causing a lot of havoc in Nigeria. And Yar'Adua, their former president who died, had to sign an amnesty program for the Niger Delta militants because he wanted to solve that problem. And I believe they are giving Niger Delta states, those 9 states, oil producing states, some amount, I think 13% or so like that, from the oil revenue. The derivation that they are getting from the national government, that comes from the oil revenue, 13%. You see, so regions that are very rich and they feel that they are not receiving resources from the government, they will begin to agitate. The Niger Delta is a very, very good example. Now, when Yar'Adua gave them amnesty and then, gave them the 13% derivation, they calmed down. Now there's a lot of, even though you have some skirmishes and some other problems there, but at least they have calmed down. It's not as, the situation is not as it was before. So that is one of the ways to prevent conflict in Africa, in a continent that has so many tribes and in a continent that is prone to conflict. So one of the things that you have to do is to share political power. You see, in Ethiopia as well, the Oromo people, the central government was unwilling to share power with the Oromo people. And what did they do? They had to start fighting the central government because the central government was unwilling to share political power. You go down to Uganda, the Buganda Kingdom. You see, they were an autonomous region, and then when Museveni came in 1985 and instituted, the fake decentralization system, it eroded their autonomy, and they also started agitating. So this issue that I'm discussing with you guys is very important. It's one of the ways that Africa can develop very fast. When you prevent conflict, the government does not use the money that they are supposed to develop their country to be buying ammunition. No African country should be doing that, even because the people like the basic necessities like access to water, access to drinking water, access to good education, access to health. So all that money that is being wasted, buying ammunition from China and other places, the government can use that money to spur development, to promote development and prosperity in the countries in Africa. So that's one way through which African countries can prevent conflict by sharing political power. The central government, the ruling elites, but it's unfortunate that most of the ruling elites are unwilling to share political power with the states or the regions and the municipalities. The second thing that can also help to prevent conflict is to share resources. The two things are together. The national government must be willing to share power and resources with the regions or the states and the local municipalities. Like I've given the example of the Niger Delta, the Oromo people, the Buganda people. You must share resources. But I don't know why our ruling elites are some of them are greedy. As a leader, you must be able to sacrifice. You are not leading for yourselves, you are leading people. You are there to serve the people. So you must be willing to give up your own priorities. You must be willing to be selfless, not selfish, not greedy. If you're a political leader, you must be willing to share power. If you're a political leader, you must be willing to share resources. In the case of sharing power, most of our African countries, because they are under centralized systems of government, they are involved in so many activities. So what these nations can do is that the central government or the national government should perform maybe just 5 functions. Maybe national defense, foreign affairs, immigration, monetary issues. Those 4, the key important issues: national defense, foreign affairs, immigration, monetary issues, and any other important issues. Maybe, let's say, 5 very important issues that are performed by the national government. Then, the rest of the responsibilities, the rest of the functions, they give it to the local governments and the regional governments. Then, in some areas, we have what we call concurrent responsibilities. Like maybe in the area of health, education, and something like that, the national government and the regional governments, they will be exercising concurrent responsibilities in some limited areas. But these 3 tiers of government, responsibilities must be divided. The central government is just focusing on the protection of the people, defense, the economy, financial issues, monetary issues, and foreign affairs and immigration. Those are the things that the central government is involved. Those are their duties. The rest of the things like education, healthcare, sports, economic issues, some economic issues. You delegate those things to the regions and to the states so that the governors also will have the responsibility to provide those things, because the purpose of the government is to meet the needs of the people. And the government has 3 layers. So why would the central government be involved in all the things? No, you divide the responsibilities. The federal government or the national government or the central government concentrates on a few responsibilities, like national defense, those important issues. That is for the central government, and then the regional governments or state governments and the local government. You see, if we do that, it will prevent conflict. It will bring prosperity and development in our nation. That's why God, ordered or created this system of government, the decentralized system of government. So you share political power, you share resources. And then the third thing that can prevent conflict in Africa is when the central government grants autonomy to regions or to certain tribes. Granting autonomy means giving them the resources and the powers to define their own future. So sharing of power, sharing of resources, and granting autonomy to regions. You see the IPOP people, they are fighting because of self-determination. They claim that they don't have the autonomy to define their future. The Yoruba people are fighting for self-determination. They claim that they don't have the autonomy, that, the North is marginalizing them. So when you share power, you share resources, and you grant autonomy, the authority and the resources for a particular region, like Nigeria, that is divided into 3 regions: the North, the East, and the West, the Igbos, the Yorubas, and the Hausas in the North. This is critical. The autonomy of regions or tribes is very important. You see, that is the reason why the English-speaking Cameroonians are presently in a civil war with the Francophone majority government. Why? Because their autonomy has been eroded by the French majority government. You see, the way God created human beings are not supposed to oppress other human beings. Human beings are not supposed to marginalize other human beings. When you begin to oppress other people, they react. When you begin to oppress other people, they will stand up and fight for their rights. Even if it takes 1 million years, they will stand up and fight for their rights. You see, for the English-speaking Cameroonians, before they joined the French-speaking Cameroonians in 1961, their political leaders agreed that they are going to form a federal system of government. The reason being that each territory will be autonomous. And then they even came up with an agreement, I think in November 1960, where Ahidjo and Foncha agreed, and they signed a document that the federal government will be a limited government. Each territory will have their own government and legislature. So they agreed on that. And then when the Southern Cameroonians voted in favor to join French Cameroon, and they had the Fumban conference, and later on they had the tripartite conference in Yaoundé, and when the constitution came out, the constitution did not reflect the 1960 agreement, where the political leaders agreed that they are going to form a federal system so that each territory will be autonomous. You see, this issue about autonomy is very important. So, even during the Fumban conference, Dr. Foncha and Ahidjo, both of them reiterated their support for a federal system. Why? Because the English side will be independent, the French side will also be independent. Even before the Fumban conference, the English-speaking politicians, 51 delegations, they met in Bamenda, and they agreed on a loose federation, that when they are joining the French Cameroon, it's going to be on the grounds of a loose federation. Why? Because they wanted to protect their culture. They wanted to protect their political, social, economic heritage that they received from the British government. Because the French sector was ruled by France. So they had their own political culture as well. So when these two groups came together, they wanted a system where the two territories would be autonomous. So Ahidjo, in the course of the discussion, agreed. But when the constitution came out in 1961, Ahidjo had plenary powers. He had broad powers. So because he had broad powers, now he started eroding the autonomy of the Anglophones. Anglophones complained in 1962. Ahidjo did not listen. They have tried all kinds of ways, for peaceful resolution of this problem. The Francophone majority government, they are unwilling to listen to the people. Even in 1993, 50,000 people gathered in Boya, and they came up with, a federal constitution, sent it to Yaoundé for discussion. They rejected it. You see, so the Anglophone people have been very peaceful. They have tried all kinds of ways. They have taken the Cameroon government to court, pressured them. Nothing has happened. And in 2016, the lawyers now, wrote a letter to the federal government that they should return to a federal system. The government still refused. And then when they organized, a peaceful protest, the government came in, beat the lawyers, arrested some of them, tried them, and in 2017, the whole thing escalated into the civil conflict that we have now. In April, I was just reading the statistics, over 4,000 people have died. You see, from those people would have been living right now, 4,000 people, and that's just, an estimate. That's not even the correct number. About maybe 7,000 Anglophones have lost their lives. Why? Because the Francophone majority government is unwilling to share power. It's unwilling to share resources. It's unwilling to grant the Anglophones their autonomy. Something that they agreed before the union in 1961. But now they want to show that they are more powerful. They can change their position. It is something that was agreed. There's a covenant. There's a social contract that was entered into between the leaders of the Southern Cameroonians and Ayijo. So it's not something that is fabricated. You can go and, the documents are there. But you see, greed is hindering the peace talks in Cameroon. Selfishness is hindering the peace talks in Cameroon. And as a result, my people are dying every day. People are suffering every day. They are fighting an unnecessary war that can be solved in 15 minutes. If the politicians are honest, Ayijo made promises and he broke all those promises. You see why lives have lost. The Anglophones have lost lives. Even the Francophones also. Some of them don't want this war. Because some of the soldiers too are dying. They want the situation to end peacefully so that people can return back to their normal lives. Nobody wants this. But one of the main reason is because of centralization. The elites don't want to give up the power. The elites don't want to share power with the Anglophones. The elites, under the federal government, power was shared, even though the constitution was highly centralized. At least the Anglophones had some things that they were controlling, even though they were marginalized from the very beginning. So, decentralization is very important. Centralization will trigger conflict. Centralization will cause conflict. And conflict will result to waste. The government will be using their scarce resources to buy arms, to kill their own very people. How can you imagine Francophones and Anglophones? They are brothers. But the leaders don't care. They are killing their own brothers and sisters because they want to fight a war, an unnecessary war. A war that is clear. Even the international community, the history is very clear. The history is on the side of the English-speaking Cameroonians, but the international community don't want to help. Even Britain, that colonized Southern Cameroons, they are unwilling to help. The French government, all the international community, these guys are unwilling to help. They are seeing how people are suffering and dying in an unnecessary conflict that can be resolved very easily. You see, centralization is not a good system. It is time for African countries to change, from centralized systems, from the centralized system to a decentralized system. That is the plan of God for all nations, because God wants to prosper nations. You see, decentralization encourages the sharing of power. Decentralization encourages the sharing of resources. Decentralization encourages, autonomy to regions, to states. Just imagine if God, He is all-knowing, all-powerful. If God can share power with man, who is man not to share power with his fellow men? Who is man? Why is it that our leaders cannot, think? God, in Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, said, let them have dominion. God created the heavens and the earth. It belongs to the heavens, the earth, they belong to God, but God decided that, look, I'm going to give man, earth to control on my behalf. Take it, control, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, dominate. If God is willing to share, power with man, if God is willing to share resources with man, if God is willing to give man autonomy, why is it that our leaders cannot give their fellow brothers and sisters, power, resources, and the autonomy that they need to define their own lives? Why is it so difficult? What is there? Let us follow the blueprint that God has given unto us. And there will be peace and prosperity in Africa, because God has already blessed Africa with all the resources. What we need now are compassionate leaders who will follow the blueprint, and that will unleash, prosperity, unleash development, unleash, peace and stability in Africa. Decentralization is our only option. Decentralization is our only option in Africa. So let us adopt decentralization. Let us reject centralization in favor of decentralization, so that everyone in Africa will benefit. Everyone will be blessed. Everyone will live in peace. Everyone will be happy. It's for everybody. The continent is not just for some people, and then the poor will keep suffering. No, it's for everybody. So let's adopt decentralization so that everyone will enjoy the blessings, the peace, the prosperity, and all the good things that God has endowed Africa with. Thank you so much for watching this video. We are going to continue tomorrow. Until tomorrow, bye-bye. Please leave your comments and share this message with your friends and family members. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.